Welcome, my friends. What is up with Apple, you may ask? Apple shares fell by the most since September 2022 after third quarter earnings report. Apple's decline Friday was its worst day so far in 2023, and its largest loss since September 29 last year. The stock slid after the company said it expected another decline in revenue in the September quarter, although it signaled that iPhone sales would do better than a 2% year-over-year decline. The stock is up 40% so far this year. If you recall, Apple sales fell 5% in Q4, which was its largest quarterly revenue decline since 2016. That was Apple's overall sales for the holiday quarter were about 5% lower than last year's. And, that was the first year-over-year sales decline since 2019. Barclays cuts Apple price target on concerns over demand weakness. But, when you think about it, what has Apple really invented lately? In fact, what has any big tech company really invented lately? And, Apple iPhone 14 sales are rumored to be slower than expected. And MacBook sales are confirmed to be down. Let's admit it, the iPhone 14 is really not a lot different than the 13. And a lot of iPhone users are still on iPhone 11 models. Barclays analysts said they are lowering their estimates for Apple. Wall Street analysts cite production problems and weakening demand. Analysts are concerned that Apple services estimates are at risk. So, what does this mean for Apple? What does it mean for big tech companies? What does it mean for the economy? And, what does it mean for the future of the United States? But, before we get into all of that, please press the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. And, before we continue, a word from the sponsor of this video. Today's sponsor is InnerLife.com, creator of the InnerLife STS system. InnerLife STS is a cloud mobile platform for mental health care and its integration with primary medical care. InnerLife STS is designed for assessment, data collection and analytics, documentation, and progress tracking. InnerLife STS creates and composes conceptualized narratives and builds them into professional-grade reports. These reports are designed for use by mental health professionals, primary care physicians, justice system professionals and universities and include mental health assessment reports, mental health treatment reports, and treatment progress reports. And InnerLife STS uses doctor-selected pseudonames for all patients. So, only the doctor knows the patient identity. Apple shares fell 4.8% Friday, the day after the company shared its fiscal third quarter earnings report that saw the company forecast a decline in revenue in the September quarter, which would be the company's fourth in a row. Apple's decline Friday was its worst day so far in 2023, and its largest loss since September 29 last year. The stock is up 40% so far this year. Apple's earnings beat soft expectations on both profit and revenue, but overall sales declined 1% as iPhone, iPad and Mac sales flagged. The stock slid after the company said it expected similar sales in the September quarter, although it signaled that iPhone sales would do better than a 2% year-over-year decline. The declines in Apple's hardware overshadowed strong performance in the company's profitable services division, which grew 8% and is expected to grow even faster in the current quarter. Apple announced its fiscal Q3 earnings after the bell on Thursday, reporting iPhone sales that missed analysts' expectations while revenue fell 1.4% over last year, the third straight quarter of declines. About half of the company's overall revenue comes from its iPhone segment. On Friday, Apple stock was down more than 2.3% in early trading, as the tech giant's gloomy results contributed to its share price decline. Revenue has slid for multiple quarters as Mac and iPad sales have flagged. On a call with analysts, Apple CFO Luca Maestri said the company expects revenue for these products to fall by double digits from last year, citing pent-up demand from the prior year quarter after factory shutdowns. Services was a bright spot for Apple, rising a faster than expected 8% from the year-ago period to an all-time high for the segment. The company also beat expectations for overall revenue and earnings per share. Apple announced its fiscal Q3 earnings after the bell on Thursday, reporting iPhone sales that missed analysts' expectations while revenue fell 1.4% over last year, the third straight quarter of declines. On Friday, Apple stock was down more than 2.3% in early trading, as the tech giant's gloomy results contributed to its share price decline. The company also beat expectations for overall revenue and earnings per share. Here are some of Apple's most significant metrics compared to what Wall Street was expecting in the company's fiscal third quarter, according to data from Bloomberg. Revenue, $81.80 billion versus $81.55 billion expected, $82.96 billion in Q3 2022. EPS, $1.26 versus $1.20 expected, $1.20 in Q3 2022. iPhone revenue, $39.67 billion versus $39.79 billion expected, $40.67 billion in Q3 2022. Services revenue, $21.21 billion versus $20.77 billion expected, $19.60 billion in Q3 2022. Mac revenue, $6.84 billion versus $6.37 billion expected, $7.38 billion in Q3 2022. iPad revenue, $5.79 billion versus $6.33 billion expected, $7.22 billion in Q3 2022. Wearables revenue, $8.28 billion versus $8.38 billion expected, $8.08 billion in Q3 2022. Apple CEO Tim Cook holds one of the company's new MacBooks on the Apple campus Monday, June 5, 2023, in Cupertino, California. Jeff Chu/AP Photo. The quarterly report arrived just weeks ahead of Apple's new hardware lineup, including the iPhone 15 and its next slate of smartwatches. We expect our September quarter year-over-year revenue performance to be similar to the June quarter, assuming that the macroeconomic outlook doesn't worsen from what we are projecting today for the current quarter, said CFO Luca Maestri. Maestri told analysts that the company expects revenue for iPhone and services to accelerate, while Mac and iPad are expected to decline by double digits due to difficult compares. The company experienced a slight acceleration of performance in the Americas, Maestri said, but flagged in the US, because the US smartphone market has been in a decline for the last couple of quarters. During the call, Cook once again emphasized Apple's success in emerging markets. Revenue reached new highs in multiple countries, including India and Indonesia, Cook said. Cook noted an acceleration in China but different consumer behavior stateside. It's a challenging smartphone market in the US currently, he said. Apple touted its install base of 2 billion active devices. We are happy to report that we had an all-time revenue record in services during the June quarter, driven by over 1 billion paid subscriptions, and we saw continued strength in emerging markets thanks to robust sales of iPhone, Cook said in a statement. Apple's earnings, which arrived alongside Amazon's results on Thursday, round out the quarterly reports from the major tech companies, which featured better than expected results from Meta and Alphabet and a revenue miss from Microsoft last week. The tech sector has surged this year, riding optimism on cutting-edge AI technology, the resiliency of online advertising, and growth in cloud services. After wrapping up July, the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite won its fifth straight month of gains and is up almost 40% for the year. Apple has been a Wall Street darling for as long as most people can remember. Bank of America downgraded of Apple in October to neutral from buy. The resulting sell-off vaporized $120 billion off its market cap. Apple's stock continues to be stronger than its big tech peers. Shares in Apple fell by over 25% in 2022, which is actually much better than most big tech companies. The Nasdaq Composite was down 31% in 2022. But that does not mean that all Wall Street analysts are very optimistic. Apple reportedly cut iPhone 14 production by 6 million units. Demand for the iPhone 14 in China has been slow. China is one of Apple's most important markets. Inflation is raging in most countries of the world. Central banks in almost every country are aggressively raising interest rates. And, now that there is interest on deposit accounts, investors are dumping stocks. And Apple has a number of other issues to contend with. There seems to be a lot of management turnover recently. Apple is facing an ageism lawsuit from one of its directors. And, suppliers to Apple are also weakening. For example, shares in Corning have been trending down recently. Corning makes glass for the top electronics companies, like Samsung and Apple. Apple reports Q3 earnings this week amid speculation slowing consumer iPhone 14 sales. Maybe overall slowing iPhone sales will not hurt the high end of the market. We will see. Corning said that smartphone unit sales declined 14% year-over-year for Q3. Corning's largest business is in making cables for fiber optic systems. That business grew 16% to $1.31 billion in Q3. But display sales fell a whopping 28% year-over-year in Q3. And, if you follow this channel, you probably already know that tech companies are sensing weak macroeconomic conditions. Inflation is raging in most parts of the world. Central banks are aggressively raising interest rates in order to tame inflation. Consumers' budgets are getting tighter because of having to spend more on gas and food. So, consumer discretionary spending is weakening. And the United States is now teetering on the brink of recession. But, what do you think? Please leave us a comment below and hit the like button. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Please share this video on social media. Thank you for watching.